welcome back to the Triple J Ranch vlog. My name is Julia Jensen, and today, by popular vote from y'all, our viewers, I'm going to be sharing my favorite homemade bread recipe. So this is a super easy recipe. It is no knead, so no kneading required, and you also don't need a bread starter like sourdough starter. It's also very forgiving, which is great. It is very fast to make the dough to prepare it, so typically I will make this about once a week. I am a homemaker, so I'm home most of the day, so I will make it in the morning and then just do house chores or grocery shopping or whatever while I'm waiting for it to rise. If you do work outside the home, you are just going to want to plan ahead because it takes a couple hours to rise. So you're going to want to either prepare it in the evening or on your day off from work. But let's go ahead and get started. Today I'm going to be using my KitchenAid mixer. If you do not have a KitchenAid mixer, you can mix it by hand. I have done that before and it turns out just as well. It is just a little bit harder on your wrist because the dough starts getting kind of sticky. So I am going to use a KitchenAid mixer today just because I have one. If you do have a KitchenAid, you're going to go ahead and use your dough hook attachment. See if you can see that. You can see what that looks like. So you're going to want to go ahead and put that on. This is very limited ingredients, which is great. Most of the time, these are ingredients we already have in our house. Except for maybe the yeast. I don't know if everyone keeps yeast in their house. So you're going to want to use just either all-purpose flour or bread flour. I use King Arthur Baking Company unbleached all-purpose flour. You can see that there. I have not tried making this recipe with gluten-free flour. I imagine it would probably work. There might be some adjustments you might need to make with other ingredients, but if you try that with gluten-free flour, please let me know in the comments if it turns out good, because I would love to know. I have some friends that are gluten-free, and yeah, I would just love to know if this is a good recipe for them as well. You're going to take 3 cups of your baking flour or your all-purpose flour. And I've already measured my ingredients here just for ease in showing you guys. So you're just going to put all your dry ingredients in a big enough bowl to combine them. So 3 cups of the flour, and then the recipe calls for 2 teaspoons of kosher salt or cooking salt. I don't have that. I just use fine sea salt, just like table salt. Because table salt is a finer salt than cooking salt or kosher salt, you're going to want to lessen the quantity of salt that you use. So instead of 2 teaspoons, we're going to use 1 1/4 teaspoon. And then you are also going to use, I already cut those open, but you're going to use fast rise or instant yeast, 2 teaspoons of that as well. And basically that just means that you can put directly in there without having to dissolve it in the water first. If you do have active dry yeast, you can use it as well. You're just going to want to dissolve it in the water, let it froth a little bit, and then put it in your dry ingredients instead of directly in. You can use whatever brand. I've used Fleischmann, I've used Kroger. This is just Kroger brand. So you're gonna put that in, and then the recipe calls for 1 1/2 cups of warm water. The way they describe it is like a warm bath, basically, that you could stay in all day, like that kind of temperature. It's kind of weird, but just kind of picture that in your head. Basically, it means that you want the water warm enough that the yeast will rise, but not so hot that it's gonna kill the yeast because it's living. I usually end up using more about like 2 cups. So I start with 2 cups generally. I would say if this is your first time making it and just kind of trying to figure out your quantities, start with the 1 1/2 cups, and then you can always add more from there to get the right consistency. I will show you what the right consistency looks like, and again, if you add too much water in learning the process, just add more flour and to get the right consistency, and it'll be fine. Again, it's a very forgiving recipe. So I'm gonna go get that water real quick, and I will be right back to show y'all. So we have our 2 cups of water in there. I'm gonna show you guys what the consistency is. I just put it on stir. Again, I'm using a KitchenAid. I just put it on stir or number 2 for just a couple minutes, and then just kind of add water as needed. This is the consistency that y'all are looking for. Essentially, you don't want it to look doughy and kneadable, but you don't want it to be runny like cake batter. So somewhere in between that. See, it's kind of jiggly, but it's not like thick like a dough, but it's also not runny, super runny. See, it's taking a long time to move. So that's the consistency you're gonna want. And then you are just gonna wanna cover it and put it in a warm spot. Typically just put a plate over top of it and stick it on my stove. stove that's not turned on, my turned off stove, and just keep it out of the way it's gonna rise for 2 to 3 hours before you bake it. The recipe does say that after 2 to 3 hours, if you stick it in the fridge for a few hours or overnight, it makes it sweeter. I have tried it sticking it in the fridge for like 2 or 3 hours after letting it rise, and I really did not notice the difference. My mother-in-law says that if you let it fridge overnight though, it does make a difference. I just haven't tried it. So keep that in mind. Again, it can be really helpful because you can prepare it the day before, like in the evening. Again, if you're working, and then you could bake it in the morning or bake it on your lunch break or whatever. So we're just gonna put this and we're gonna stash it away for a couple hours, and we'll be back in a little bit to bake it. It has been 3 hours and our dough has been rising in a warm place. So we are gonna go ahead and get to baking. So I'm gonna take you with me to preheat the oven and check on the dough. The recipe does say that you are supposed to use a Dutch oven. I don't have a Dutch oven. So we're gonna do a little rig here. So this is an 8x8, 9x9 pan. And essentially you can use this instead of a Dutch oven if you're like me and you don't have one. So we're gonna put this on, again, I'll show you, but just so you know what's going on. We're gonna put this on the second rack of our oven while we preheat it. And then when we actually put the bread in, we're gonna pour boiling water inside this pan so that the steam comes up under the bread. And essentially it works like a Dutch oven. So I'm gonna go show you what that looks like, okay? Okay, so here we are. So before we preheat our oven, we're gonna go ahead and put that pan in. If you have a Dutch oven, you're gonna do the same thing. You're gonna stick it in before you preheat the oven. So we're gonna stick it on this second shelf right here. Our bread is gonna go here. That way when we have that boiling water, the steam's gonna rise up inside of it. And then we're going to preheat our oven to 450. Okay, and then we have our bread here, or our dough that's been rising. So let's take a peek at that. And it is ready to go. Look at that. So you can see it expanded quite a lot. And it's got some bubbles and just some little frothies on top there. Okay. We are going to need to flour our workspace. So you can just flour it straight on your countertop or your table if you want. Just to make it a little bit easier cleanup for myself, I use one of these flexible cutting mats. Mine does have a smooth side and then also a ridge side. So I'm gonna put the flat side up, or the smooth side up. That way all my flour and my dough and stuff doesn't get caught, especially the dough, doesn't get caught inside the ridges and make it harder to clean. So we're gonna go ahead and dust our little space a little bit. Some flour. This is just that it doesn't stick so much. And then we're gonna take some kind of spatula. I like using this wooden spatula. I just feel like it cleans a little bit better to scrape out our dough. But I actually go ahead and powder my spatula as well, just because I feel like it helps keep the dough from sticking to it quite so much as well. All right, now I'm gonna let y'all look over my shoulder here while I'm doing the bread, so y'all can see the technique. So we are just, you can see it's kind of all frothy like we looked at in the kitchen. Try to do this where y'all can see. Y'all can't really see. This is the most fun part to me, honestly, because see how it just like peels off from the bowl. I find that so satisfying. Okay, and then we are just gonna take each edge, we're gonna fold it over on top of itself like that. Super easy. You're just gonna do that all around the circle. There we go. And then we're gonna take a piece of parchment paper. Then this is the trickiest part. I'm always scared I'm gonna ruin it. Flip it, 1, 2, 3. Flop it on there. Peel it off like so, nice and clean. If it is out of shape, you can either just use your hands a little bit, and you can flour your hands too, or you can use your utensil to put it back in the circle. And then we're just gonna put a little bit more flour on there. So on top. Okay, and then we have just a normal pan here up. Let's pick it up by its sides and just flop like so. Okay, and I heard that our oven is preheated, so I'm going to take you in there with me. Okay, so we have our bread. For that boiling water that we are going to put in the pan as the alternative to the Dutch oven, I am boiling some water here in an electric kettle. Our oven is set at 450, and it is just about to boil. So I'm going to go ahead and put the bread in. Like so. You want all that steam from the hot water to get trapped in the oven, so you have to work super fast in pouring this and then shutting the oven. Without the Dutch oven, I typically start at 30 minutes, and then we'll check it and put it on for a little bit longer if we need to. So our timer just went off, so let's check and see. Looks like I did add an extra 5 minutes. That put us at like 35 minutes total cook time. It looks good. Go ahead and take it out. We will let the oven cool down before we remove that pan with hot water. Right, and we are going to want to let that cool completely. Otherwise, if you try to peel it off the parchment paper before it is cooled, you will pull off some of the bottom of the bread. I've learned that from experience. It tastes just as good, it just doesn't look as pretty. And there we have it. Thanks so much for joining me today, y'all. I hope you enjoyed that. If you try this bread recipe, or if you have any tips or tricks of the trade for me, please leave a comment below on our YouTube video or tag us at Triple J Ranch Auburn on Instagram or Facebook. We would love to see how your bread turns out, or any advice that I can use moving forward, as I'm just kind of new to this whole baking thing with bread. But if you have any comments or any suggestions or recipes you would like me to share in the future, or you would like me to try and feature, just let me know. We would love to hear from you. Thanks so much, y'all. Bye.